Madam, please step back. He'll lash out. The security guard's voice was a low growl in the cavernous marble lobby. Clara froze, her hand tightening on the handle of her cleaning cart. At the center of the chaos, a small boy with sandy brown hair sat on the floor, rocking back and forth beside a giant corporate sculpture. His face was a mask, but his eyes darted around like frantic hummingbirds. Around him, a semicircle of 5 suited executives stood helpless. One man whispered urgently into his phone. He's having another episode. Where is his nanny? The boy's soft, rhythmic humming was the only sound in the building's cold silence. Clara took a slow step forward. May I? The guard blocked her with an arm. That's the Thorne kid, he hissed. Don't get involved. The last person who tried was gone before lunch. But Clara wasn't listening. She saw the way his small fingers tapped the floor, a rhythm only he could hear. She saw the quick, shallow breaths he took whenever a shadow fell too close. I'm not going to talk to him, Clara said, her voice calm. I'm just going to sit. And she did. Right there on the cold marble floor, 5 feet away from him, still in her simple maid's uniform. She reached into her cart and pulled out a small plastic bottle of dish soap. Wordlessly, she dipped her fingers in the water from her cleaning bucket and began to blow bubbles. 1, 2, 3. The boy stilled. His rocking slowed, his humming softened. He watched, transfixed, as iridescent bubbles floated into the air. Lucas didn't look at him. He didn't ask questions. He just kept blowing bubbles. From the mezzanine above, a man stood in shoes that cost more than Clara's monthly rent. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw set like granite. His arms were crossed, but his eyes, icy and calculating, were fixed on the scene below. Damien Thorne, billionaire CEO of Thorne Industries, had crushed hostile takeovers before his second cup of coffee. But now, watching a new maid calm his son with soap bubbles, he could barely breathe. Oliver, his son, his mystery, his burden. He took the elevator down. When the doors slid open, he stepped into the lobby like a king surveying a battlefield. Miss. He said crisply, his gaze landing on her name tag. Hart. My office. Now. His gaze flicked to the boy, Oliver, who was now lying on his side, completely calm, his eyes following a single bubble as it hovered just above his face. I wasn't asking, Damien cut in. He turned to the guard. Call Dr. Evans. Have him check on Oliver immediately. He turned, his expensive shoes clicking on the marble, not waiting to see if Clara followed. Her office smelled of leather and power. Shut the door, he ordered. Clara obeyed. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared at her as if she were an unsolvable equation. Who taught you that? He asked at last. The bubbles. Clara met his gaze without flinching. My son, she said simply. He's on the spectrum. I used to be a child development aide before. She trailed off, deciding he didn't need her life story. Damien leaned forward. Let me be clear. My son does not engage. He does not play. He does not respond. Not to doctors, not to specialists, not to me. And you. His voice cracked ever so slightly. Blew some bubbles and he went silent. Clara didn't answer. She didn't need to. I want you to work with him, Damien said finally. She blinked. Excuse me. Once a week. Twice, if possible. I'll compensate you accordingly. Mr. Thorne, I'm a maid. I can change that. I don't need charity. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job. Clara took a slow, measured breath. What he needs isn't a job. Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, sharpened into steel. He has the best care money can buy, Damien snapped. Clara's voice was soft. Maybe that's the problem. The silence that followed was heavy. Then she added, "If I say yes, it's under one condition." Damien raised a brow. "I don't work for you. I work with Oliver. And when I'm with him, no observers, no cameras, no specialists lurking in the corner." He studied her long enough for her to wonder if she'd just cost herself her job entirely. Then, slowly, Damien nodded. "I'll have my assistant contact you." As she opened the door to leave, Damien called after her. "What kind were they?" Clara paused. "Simple dish soap," she said. "Always start simple. It cuts through the noise." "I don't need you to fix him," that was the first thing Damien Thorne said when Clara arrived at the penthouse 2 days later. No greeting, no handshake, just that. Clara paused in the vast foyer, her own son Sam's small hand wrapped in hers. She scanned the space. White walls, glass railings, sharp edges everywhere. No softness, no warmth. "Good," she replied quietly. "He isn't broken." Damien blinked. His arms were crossed tightly, but a muscle ticked along his jaw. "He's in his room. Down the hall." Clara crouched down to Sam. "You okay to draw for a little while?" Sam nodded, pulling a crayon roll from his small backpack. "Is he the quiet boy?" Clara smiled. "The very one." "Then I'll be quiet, too," Sam whispered, tiptoeing toward a corner of the living room. Damien watched the exchange, an unreadable expression on his face. "He's obedient." "He's kind," Clara corrected, and walked down the hall. The door to Oliver's room was ajar. It was a palace of a room, with tall windows and toys lined up with military precision. Curled in the corner was Oliver, his head pressed against the windowpane. Clara didn't speak. She sat down on the floor, about 10 feet away, pulled a small notepad from her bag, and began to draw. 5 lines, a circle, some stars. Oliver didn't turn. After a few minutes, she set the sketch down beside her and waited. Then, a shift. Oliver rose without a word, crossed the room, picked up the paper, and sat right next to her. Damien, watching silently through the cracked door, felt a knot in his chest loosen. He hadn't seen Oliver willingly sit beside anyone in nearly a year. Clara began a new sketch, a bubble floating above a boy's head. Oliver reached for a crayon from Sam's roll which she had placed between them. Not a word was spoken, and yet, something sacred was unfolding. 15 minutes later, Clara emerged. Damien was waiting. "He drew with you," he said, as if needing to hear it confirmed. "He started the conversation," Clara replied. Damien's brow furrowed. "He didn't say a word." "Talking and communicating," Clara said gently, "aren't always the same thing." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked into the kitchen. "Would you like something to drink?" "Water's fine." He poured it himself from a crystal pitcher. "I don't know how to reach him," he said, sliding the water across the massive island. Clara didn't pick it up. "Have you tried letting him reach you?" Damien stiffened. "I've done everything a father can do. Therapy, nutrition, specialists. I flew in a behavioral therapist from Sweden who charges $30,000 a week." Clara finally took a sip of water. "Sounds like you've hired a lot of people to manage him," she said. "But who sits with him?" The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was hollow. "He was 2 when he stopped talking," Damien whispered. "One day he was babbling, saying colors. The next, nothing." "What happened?" Clara asked gently. His eyes flickered. "A medical reaction. A high fever. The doctors said it was a coincidence." Clara nodded. Parents always carry the blame, even when it's not theirs to carry. Sam wandered in holding up his drawing, a picture of 4 people, him, his mom, and 2 boys with big eyes. "I made this for them," he said, "but only if they want it. Would it be all right if we joined you for a picnic dinner sometime?" Clara asked. Dinner? Damien's tone sharpened. In public? No. Here, Clara said. Safe, familiar. If he sees Sam eating, he may feel invited. I'm not hosting playdates, he replied tightly. I'm not asking for a playdate, Clara said, her voice even. I'm offering him a doorway. Damien folded his arms again, but his posture was different. Less defense, more fear. I'm afraid of doing it wrong, he admitted, almost inaudibly. I don't know how to be the kind of father he needs. Clara set her glass down. Then it's a good thing he doesn't need perfection. He just needs you. The following Friday, they gathered in Oliver's room at sunset. Clara spread a picnic blanket over the floor while Sam arranged small bowls of snacks. Grapes, cheese cubes, crackers. Everything soft, everything safe. Oliver sat in the corner, but his eyes weren't blank. They followed Sam's every movement. Clara set down a small Bluetooth speaker and a soft piano melody drifted through the room. Sam placed a blank sketch pad between himself and Oliver, then quietly began drawing. A tree, a sun, a boy under the branches. Oliver watched, his fingers twitching. Clara opened a tin of crayons. Blue first, she said gently, placing the crayon closer to Oliver. Damien watched from the doorway, arms crossed not in defiance this time, but in defense of his own fragile hope. Oliver leaned forward. He reached for the blue crayon. Then, a soft swish of wax on paper. He began to draw. Clara turned to Damien and whispered, "This is what safety looks like. It doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with stillness." Damien swallowed hard. "Why doesn't he talk to me?" "Because you don't sit on the floor," she whispered back. An hour passed. No outbursts, no rocking. Oliver even accepted a grape from Sam's hand. A miracle wrapped in silence. Oliver drew 3 stick figures. One tall, one small with curly hair, and one small with straight hair. Sam pointed. "That's your dad, that's me, and that's you." Oliver didn't answer. He just colored the tall figures tie red. Damien stepped forward. "That used to be my favorite color," he said softly. Oliver paused. Then, in the quietest voice imaginable, he whispered, "Still is." Damien sank onto the edge of the bed, his hand covering his mouth, his breath trembling. Later, as Clara was folding the blanket in the hallway, Damien approached. "He called it red," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "He hasn't labeled anything in over 2 years." "He didn't label it," Clara corrected. "He remembered it." Big difference. Damien was quiet for a moment. "You think I missed all of this because I didn't sit on the floor?" "I think," Clara said gently, "you've been standing so tall for so long, you forgot how to kneel." He met her gaze, not as a CEO, but as a father, frightened and flawed. "I want to learn," he said. Clara nodded. "Then start by asking his favorite color tomorrow. Even if you already know the answer." The next few weeks were a quiet revolution. Dinners on the floor became routine. Damien started leaving work an hour early. He learned to listen to the silence. One evening, after the boys were asleep, Clara was washing dishes in the vast kitchen when Damien joined her, towel in hand. "I thought I had to buy his future," he said finally. "The right schools, the top doctors. I built him a fortress so nothing could touch him. But maybe I also built the walls too high for me to reach in." Clara passed him a wet plate. "It's not too late." "He calls you blue," Damien said. "It's his comfort color." "What color am I to him, do you think?" Clara paused. "Red." "It still is." He let out a trembling laugh. "Red burns." "It also warms," she said. "Sometimes the same fire that scorches is the one that saves." She held his gaze for a long time, then nodded almost reverently. You're saving us in ways money never could. I'm not saving you, Clara said, drying her hands. I'm just showing you the door. The envelope was thick and embossed with the seal of the Superior Court. It sat like a bomb on Damien's kitchen island. Is that it? Clara asked, rinsing a bowl. Damien nodded once. Oliver's mother is filing for emergency custody. After vanishing for 4 years. She says I've become unstable, that I'm exposing him to questionable figures. His voice trembled. She means you. Clara leaned back, arms crossed. Does she even know his favorite color? Do you want me to back off? Damien asked, his voice low. Her answer was immediate. No. Then we fight. The courtroom smelled of leather and fear. Oliver sat quietly between Clara and Sam, clutching a sketch pad. He wore blue. Across from them, Isabel Thorne sat with a smirk and a legal team that radiated smug confidence. Your Honor, Isabel's attorney began, Mr. Thorne's judgment has deteriorated. We have evidence of him involving a household employee, one with no clinical qualifications, in repeated, unsupervised interactions with a vulnerable child. Clara didn't flinch. He's ignored professional medical advice in favor of bubble games and crayon therapy. Damien's attorney rose. Your Honor, we don't deny Mr. Thorne's methods have changed. But so have the results. Oliver speaks. He eats. He connects. The woman he's connected with, Clara Hart, is here today. She'd like to speak. Clara walked slowly to the witness stand. I was a developmental aide for 7 years, she began. I left when my son needed more than the system could give. Oliver doesn't need more labels. He needs fewer walls. I didn't treat him. I listened. I knelt. I met his silence with my own stillness. And in return, he trusted me. She turned to Isabel. When's the last time he drew you a picture? Isabel fumbled with her purse. Clara looked at the judge. I'm not here to parent him. I'm here because he taught me something every specialist forgot. Sometimes the most therapeutic thing you can do is stay. The judge nodded. Thank you, Miss Hart. As she returned to her seat, Sam stood up, walked to the judge's bench, and held up a drawing. This is Oliver's family, he said in a clear voice. That's my mom, that's me, that's him, and that's his dad. He says we're blue. That means safe. The judge leaned back, silent. Then he spoke. Effective immediately, Oliver remains in the full custody of his father, Damien Thorne. Case dismissed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Damien shielded the children with his body, grabbing Clara's hand without thinking. A journalist shouted, Mr. Thorne, are you in a relationship with your maid? Damien paused, looked at Clara, then at the camera. I'm in a relationship with Hope, he said. And she's been teaching me how to live in it. The tabloid photo was blurry but damning. Damien Thorne and Clara Hart, barefoot in a park, laughing. A child's painting was visible between them. The headline screamed, From Boardroom to Bubbles, I.S. Thorne Industries CEO falling for the help. The article dropped at dawn. By 8 a.m., the storm had hit. They're calling for my resignation, Damien said, his face pale as he met Clara in the now familiar penthouse. The board. They say I've compromised our brand. And what do you think? Clara asked softly. I think, he said, his eyes finding hers, I'm tired of being a brand. Then what do you do? You stay, he said, quoting her own words back to her. Even when it's loud. Even when it's unfair, he took a step closer. I don't care what the press says. I care what he says, he gestured toward Oliver's room. And he says your name like it means, safe, I won't take that away from him. Not again. He called a press conference for that afternoon. He stood at the podium, not in a power suit, but a simple dark sweater. He looked like a father. "I've been asked to explain myself," he began, his voice steady. "To explain why I, the CEO of a billion-dollar company, would kneel on the floor and blow bubbles. I'm not here to explain myself. I'm here to remember who I forgot to be. I forgot what it meant to slow down, to see my child not as a problem, but as a person." He gestured to the side, where Clara stood just out of frame. "That woman you all wrote about, the maid. She taught me how to listen. How to kneel. How to meet my son where he is. And if standing beside her costs me everything I built, then maybe it's time I remembered the foundation matters more than the penthouse." A reporter raised a hand. "Mr. Thorne, what is her role now?" Damien smiled. "She's not an employee. She's not a consultant." He looked directly into the camera. "She's family." The video went viral. This time, the comments were different. "We need more leaders who sound like parents. I watched this with my autistic son, and we both felt seen." That evening, Damien found Clara watching the boys finger paint in Oliver's room, which was now more of a creative studio. "You were right," he said. "This was never about me saving him. It was about letting him save me." Clara nodded. "You listened." "No," he said. "It took you." He reached for her hand. "I told the world you were family. But I want you to hear it from me. Stay, Clara. Not for the center we're building. Not for Oliver. Stay because you want to." Clara looked at him, her eyes glistening. "I've already unpacked," she whispered. From across the room, Oliver's voice, clear and strong, called out. "Daddy, Clara, look. We made a rainbow." They turned. Oliver stood before a giant paper canvas streaked with every color imaginable. In the center, 4 stick figures held hands beneath the arch: red, blue, yellow, green. Damien whispered, "He's painting in every color now." Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. "He finally feels safe enough to be all of himself." Outside, the city lights began to twinkle. Inside, the room glowed, not from lamps, but from love.